Hello, this is the 15th episode of What Would Peter Lynch Do? That explores the wisdom of the legendary investor Peter Lynch. My husband and I are grandparents. We want to invest in stocks for our children and grandchildren. What are some ways to do this?
That's a fantastic question, and one we hear variations of quite a bit. It really gets to the heart of passing on something valuable.
It really does. And it feels like a very Peter Lynch kind of question, too,
Yeah,
thinking practically about finance, but also about family and, well, wisdom.
absolutely. Because for Peter Lynch, investing wasn't just numbers on a page. It was tied to understanding the world, making smart choices, and yes, even education. So today, we've got our notes ready, and we're going deep.
Right, our mission for this deep dive. Figure out the what would Peter Lynch do approach here. Why invest for grandkids? How can you do it practically, say, in the U.S.? What kinds of things might you invest in?
And maybe the biggest piece, how do you do it without, accidentally spoiling them? How do you build responsibility alongside the portfolio?
Exactly. That's crucial. So where do we start? That why seems pretty fundamental.
It is. And the best way to grasp the why from a Lynch perspective is this great story he loved to tell about the seventh graders at St. Agnes School.
Oh, right. The stock picking project. That one really makes you think. 1990, was it?
That's the one. Social studies teacher gives these 13-year-olds some imaginary money, tells them, build a stock portfolio.
Just like that. No complex instructions.
Nope. The core idea was simple. Pick companies you know, things you see around you, things you use.
So what did 13-year-olds in 1990 know? Let's see. Clothes, maybe?
You got it. They kicked Gap, The Limited, drinks they like Pepsi, Coca-Cola.
Makes sense.
Mattel was in there because of Barbie. Nike, of course, for
Right.
Snickers. And Disney, well, everyone knew Disney.
Okay, so a portfolio of really familiar brands and the result. That's the amazing part.
It really is. Over the next 2 years, this portfolio, picked by kids using common sense, it had a 70% return.
70%.
That's huge.
huge.
It was massive. At the time, that performance beat something like 99% of professional fund managers in the U.S.
Wow. So what did Peter Lynch take away from that? It wasn't just luck, obviously.
Not at all. He saw clear lessons first, and this became his mantra: invest in what you know.
Right. The kids weren't trying to be fancy. They were just honest about what was popular in their world.
Exactly. It showed that finding good companies often starts just by looking around, seeing what businesses are succeeding in your daily life.
So you don't need an MBA to spot a good trend sometimes.
That was his second point. Investing isn't some secret club for experts. The St. Agnes kids proved common sense and observation can be incredibly powerful tools, maybe even more powerful than complex analysis sometimes.
And there was a third lesson too, right? Something deeper than just making money.
Yes, and this is key for the grandparent angle. It helps develop a worldview. It changes the conversation.
How's that?
Well, Peter Lynch pointed out, instead of just buying grandkids Nike shoes, you can talk about owning a tiny piece of Nike. Ask them, how many shoes do you think Nike needs to sell for our investment to grow?
Ah, so it connects consumption to business success. Makes them think about the engine behind the brands.
Precisely. They start seeing the economy in action all around them. It's not just buying stuff, it's understanding commerce, growth, how the world works financially.
So the why is really about empowerment, giving them this understanding, this tool for life.
That's the core of it. Okay, so if we agree the why is compelling, let's shift gears. How do you actually do it? Let's talk practical steps, especially here in the U.S. Using the methods our source material highlights.
Right, the nuts and bolts. The first one mentioned is pretty common, the custodial account, UGMA or UTMA.
Exactly. UGMA is Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. UTMA is Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. Basically the same idea. The account is legally the grandchild's, uses their social security number.
But the grandparent manages it.
Right. You, as the grandparent, act as the custodian. You make all the investment decisions until the grandchild legally becomes an adult. That age varies by state, usually 18 or 21.
And setting these up isn't too complicated.
Generally, no. Most big brokerage firms, think Fidelity, Schwab, places like that, have pretty straightforward online processes for opening custodial accounts.
Okay, and the big advantage here, especially for younger kids, is taxes, right? The kiddie tax.
Yes, that's a key benefit. For 2024, the first $1,300 in investment income, dividends, interest, capital gains inside that account is completely tax-free for the child.
Tax-free is always good.
Definitely. And then the next $1,300 is taxed, but at the grandchild's own income tax rate.
Which for a kid is usually pretty low.
Almost certainly the lowest bracket, yeah, currently 10%. So that first $2,600 of income each year gets really favorable tax treatment compared to if you held those investments in your own name and paid tax at your rate. It helps the money compound faster.
That makes a real difference over decades. And how much can you put in without gift tax headaches?
You can use the annual gift tax exclusion. For 2024, it's $18,000 per person. So one grandparent can gift $18,000 to each grandchild each year.
And if both grandparents contribute?
Then together, you can gift up to $36,000 per grandchild per year into their custodial account, completely free of any gift tax reporting or payment. That's a lot of potential fuel for growth.
$36,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can build up fast.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the second method, the one called the ultimate weapon?
Ah, yes, the custodial Roth IRA. This one is incredibly powerful, but there's a catch.
There's always a catch. What is it?
The grandchild must have earned income, real money from a real job.
Like babysitting, mowing lawns, a summer job at the ice cream shop, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Anything where they get paid for actual work they did, if they have that earned income.
Then what?
Then you, the grandparent, can contribute to a Roth IRA set up in their name. You can contribute up to the amount they actually earn that year, but no more than the annual IRA contribution limit.
Okay, so if they earn $2,000 from a part-time job, you could put $2,000 into their Roth IRA for them.
Precisely. Up to the annual max, which is $7,000 for under 50s in 2024.
And why is this the ultimate weapon? What makes the Roth so special?
It's the magic of tax-free growth and withdrawal. Everything that money earns over the decades, potentially 50, 60, 70 years, it all grows completely tax-free.
Wow.
And then when they take qualified withdrawals in retirement, also completely tax-free, you're essentially giving them decades of compound growth shielded entirely from taxes.
So it's like prepaying their retirement taxes decades in advance.
That's a great way to think about it. The source called it gifting a goose that lays golden eggs. Tax-free golden eggs for potentially their whole life. If they have earned income, it's hard to beat the long-term power of a Roth IRA started early.
Okay, that's a game changer if the earned income part fits.
Yeah.
So we have the why education worldview. We have the how UGMO Teme or Roth IRA. Now back to Peter Lynch. What should you actually buy in these accounts?
Right. And this is where his philosophy really shines for involving grandkids. Remember the St. Agnes kids? Invest in what you know.
To apply that directly.
Yes. His advice was literally, go shopping with your grandchild.
To the mall.
To the mall, the grocery store. Look at the websites they use. Ask them, what stores are always packed? What phone does everyone want? What's the cool new game or toy?
And the answers might point to Nike, Apple, Costco, Disney, the kinds of companies we talked about.
Absolutely. Their observations about what's popular are valuable data, and tied to that is his next point. Invest in companies they can understand.
Makes sense. Trying to explain, I don't know, a semiconductor company to a 10-year-old is tough.
Exactly. But explaining McDonald's, see? People buy burgers all over the world, the company does well, and our little piece of the company grows too. That's tangible.
They can connect the dots.
Right. And then he'd say, look for 10 beggars together.
His famous term for stocks that go up 10 times. Find the next big thing.
Sort of. Look for them in trends the grandkids are spotting. Maybe it's a new technology, a new way of doing things they're excited about. Peter Lynch really believed their perspective could be gold. He literally said, your observation of your world may be better than Grandpa reading the Wall Street Journal.
I love that. It empowers them, makes them feel like their insights matter in this.
It does. But what if the grandchild is, 2 years old? Or maybe they're 15, but just not interested in stocks. Does it have to be individual stock picking? What about something simpler, like an S&P 500 fund?
Yeah, that's a really practical question. Can you still follow the Lynch spirit with an index fund?
I think you definitely can, and the source material strongly supports this. While Peter Lynch was the ultimate stock picker, his core ideas were about common sense, long-term growth, and owning good businesses. An S&P 500 ETF fits that perfectly.
How so? What are the benefits of just buying the index?
Well, first, instant diversification. You buy one share, you own a tiny slice of 500 of the biggest U.S. companies.
Like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Coke, Disney, Nike. They're all in there.
Almost certainly, yes. All the big established names. So you're not betting on just one company. You're spreading the risk automatically.
Yeah.
No need to pick winners.
Okay, diversification check. What else?
You're essentially investing in America's success. Peter Lynch was fundamentally optimistic about the long-term growth of the U.S. economy. The S&P 500 is basically a bet on that continued growth. You're riding the wave of the biggest companies in the system.
And didn't another famous investor heavily endorse this approach?
Oh yeah, Warren Buffett. His advice for the trustee managing his wife's inheritance was stark. Put 90% in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund.
Wow. If Buffett says it's good enough for his family.
It's a pretty powerful endorsement, right? Plus, these funds are super cheap. Expense ratios can be incredibly low, like 0.03%, and it's simple. Buy it, hold it, let it grow.
So for the baby grandchilds or the teenager who'd rather do anything but talk stocks.
The S&P 500 is likely the best default. And that leads to what the source calls the hybrid strategy, which might actually be the smartest approach for many families.
Okay, a hybrid. How does that work?
Think of it in two phases. Phase 1, maybe ages 0 to 12, or whenever they're just not ready or interested. During this time, 100% of the money goes into a low-cost S&P 500 ETF.
Build the foundation. Keep it simple, keep it growing.
Exactly. Focus on consistent contributions, let the market do the heavy lifting and compounding work its magic. Then phase 2, maybe around age 13 or if they start showing some curiosity.
Okay, what changes then?
You introduce the playground. You still put the bulk of the money, say 90% of new contributions, into the S&P 500. That remains the solid cornerstone. But you take a small slice, maybe 10%, for that educational Peter Lynch-style stock picking.
Ah, so the 10% is where they can try picking Nike or Disney or maybe a gaming company like Nintendo.
Precisely. It's a safe space to learn, to apply those invest in what you know ideas, to see how individual stocks perform, make some mistakes, learn some lessons, without risking the core nest egg.
And if they're still not interested in the playground, even as teenagers.
That's the beauty of it. If they're not engaged, no problem. That 10% just goes into the S&P 500 along with the other 90%.
So the main goal-building wealth continues regardless of their interest level.
Exactly. The 90% base grows steadily and safely. The 10% is an option for hands-on learning if they want it. It respects Lynch's idea that you don't have to be a stock analyst to benefit from the market's long-term growth.
That feels really balanced.
Yeah.
Secure growth plus an educational opportunity. Okay, this covers the why, how, and what. But now the really tricky part. The elephant in the room. Won't giving them all this money just spoil them, make them lazy.
Yeah, this is the deepest concern, and the source material tackles it head-on. The fear is real, we've all heard stories, but the solution proposed isn't to hide the money or avoid investing. It's to change the framework.
Change the framework, how?
Shift from thinking about it as unconditional gifting to creating a valued partnership. Use the money itself and the process of investing it as a teaching tool. Embed it in responsibility, effort, and understanding. It actually aligns with how Peter Lynch felt about kids earning allowance, you know?
Yeah.
The value of earning it.
So it's not just free money falling from the sky.
Absolutely not. The source lays out 5 key principles to help grandparents cultivate wise stewards instead of just, well, rich kids.
Okay, let's hear them. Principle number 1.
The matching fund principle. This is powerful. Instead of just putting money in, you match their efforts.
Watch what they earn. Or save.
Both. You could say, for every dollar you earn mowing lawns, we'll put $1 in your account. Or, for every dollar of your allowance you choose to save instead of spend, we'll match it 50 cents.
Ah, so it directly links their work or their discipline to the investment growth. They see their actions amplifying the benefit.
Exactly. It teaches the synergy between labor and capital right away. What's principle number 2?
The sweat equity principle. This broadens the idea of earning beyond just money. You reward effort and achievement in other areas.
Like what? Good grades, yeah. Or maybe hitting a reading goal, read 10 books, discuss them, and a contribution goes in. Or achieving a certain number of volunteer hours. Or showing real progress, learning an instrument or a sport.
So you're rewarding perseverance, discipline, character. Things that require sweat equity.
Precisely. It connects the investment growth not just to money, but to personal development and important values. It shows you value their effort and patience.
Okay, makes sense. Principle 3.
The financial literacy requirement. This is crucial. Access to and use of the money is tied to understanding it.
How does that work in practice?
Well, one suggestion is annual reviews. Sit down together, look at the statement. See, we put this much in, the S&P 500 did this, that's compounding working for you. Make it visual.
Showing them the mechanics.
Yes. And then later, when they're older and maybe need money for college or a car or a down payment, you don't just hand it over.
What do?
You might require them to present a simple plan for how they'll use it, or maybe they have to read a basic personal finance book and discuss it with you first. It makes them pause, think, and demonstrate responsibility before accessing larger sums.
instilling that sense of stewardship. Okay, principle 4.
The family storytelling principle. This one's about context. Don't let the money just be an abstract number. Share the story behind it.
Your story, like how you earned it.
Yes. How you earned and saved the money you're contributing, and why you decided to start this investment for them. Talk about your hopes for them, the values you want to pass on.
So it becomes part of the family narrative, not just a bank balance.
Exactly. It transforms it from just money into family legacy. It gives it history, meaning love, that makes it much harder to spend thoughtlessly later on. They understand the sacrifice and intention behind it.
That's really powerful. Okay, the 5th and final principle.
Staggered and conditional gifting. This is about the timing of access. The source strongly advises, don't just dump the whole accumulated sum on them the day they turn 18 or 21.
Why not? Too overwhelming.
Often, yes. It can be a recipe for poor decisions if they haven't developed financial maturity. Instead, structure the access.
How, like, release it in chunks.
Precisely. You can use a trust or just have an informal agreement. Maybe a portion becomes available at 25 for grad school or starting out. Another portion at 30 for a house down payment. Maybe more at 35 if they're starting a business.
And you can still tie conditions to those releases.
Absolutely. Link them to milestones, reinforce the financial literacy, make sure they have a purpose for it. It gives them time to grow into managing the money and connects it to responsible life goals.
So these 5 principles together, they fundamentally shift it from a passive gift to an active, ongoing educational partnership.
That's the core idea. It's not about hiding money. It's about using it strategically to teach responsibility, values, and financial wisdom along the way.
Which brings us to maybe the last big question raised in our notes. Is all this stuff, the accounts, the matching, the teaching, is it really only for wealthy families? What if you don't have huge amounts to invest?
That's such an important question. And the answer from the source material is a very strong no. In fact, the argument is that this kind of financial education is actually more crucial for families starting with less.
More crucial. How can that be?
Think about the goals and the risks. For families already wealthy, the focus is often on maintenance managing what's already there. They usually have a buffer, cushion if mistakes are made.
Right. Losing some doesn't change their fundamental situation.
Exactly. But for an ordinary family, the goal is creation, building wealth from maybe very little. There is no cushion. A bad financial mistake, crippling debt, mismanaging a small windfall can be devastating. It can set them back years or even generations.
The cost of failure is much higher.
Much higher. So learning these skills, how to save, how to invest wisely, how to avoid debt traps, how to use compounding, isn't just helpful. It's a vital life skill. It's a key way to potentially break out of financial insecurity.
So it's less about managing abundance and more about building a foundation.
Yes. And kids from families with fewer resources often understand the value of a dollar more intuitively. When they see how even small, consistent amounts can grow over time through investing, it's not just theory, it's tangible hope. It shows them a path forward.
It makes compounding feel real and accessible.
It really does. And the source makes this point beautifully. The most important legacy isn't the final account balance. It's the financial DNA you pass on.
Financial DNA, what does that mean?
It means the habits, the mindset, the knowledge. How to handle money wisely. How to be patient. How to make compounding your friend. Think about Peter Lynch or Warren Buffett. They didn't start with immense inherited wealth. Their fathers passed on financial wisdom. That knowledge, that DNA, is the truly invaluable inheritance, especially when starting from scratch.
So it really comes back to that old saying, teaching them how to fish, not just giving them a fish.
Exactly. You're giving them the tools for economic self-reliance, for building their own future. This approach isn't some exclusive club. It's essential financial literacy for everyone, perhaps most life-changing for those who need it most.
Wow. It's amazing how a practical question about investing for grandkids loops back to these really profound ideas about education, values, and legacy. It really underlines Peter Lynch's core principle, doesn't it? That careful observation and patience, understanding how things work, it applies to so much more than just stocks. It's fundamental life wisdom.
It absolutely is. Seeing value, understanding growth, connecting effort and reward, being patient. These are lessons for investing, yes, but they're lessons for building a good life too. And maybe the most valuable gift here isn't just the money, but the shared journey of learning and growing that wisdom together. That partnership, that teaching, that might be the real 10-bagger in the long run.
See you next time. This was What Would Peter Lynch Do? Thank you for joining us today. Have a nice day.